Hello, I'm Ben Peterson, Executive Director of the City County Planning Commission. There are some significant changes to the zoning ordinance being proposed, specifically concerning short-term rentals and temporary signage. We produced this short informational video to go over the changes in order that you could be informed and be able to provide input on these proposed changes prior to them being voted on. The changes described in this video are not law yet. At the end of the video, I will describe ways you can provide input on the proposed changes, the formal approval process, and a general timeline for moving forward to enact the proposed changes. To begin, I turn it over to Zach to describe proposed changes to short-term rental regulations, also commonly referred to as Airbnbs, though these regulations will apply to all online rental platforms.
Hi, my name is Zach Jones, and I'm a staff member at the City County Planning Commission here in Bowling Green. Over the last few months, as we've been reviewing changes to our zoning ordinance, one particular area of emphasis has been short-term rentals and how we adapt to new trends and changes. So if you'll follow along, I have a short presentation where I'd like to explain exactly what short-term rentals are and what those changes will look like. Short-term rentals. What are they? A short-term rental, STR, is a dwelling unit arranged for short-term stays of 30 days or less for rent or lease. They've been known colloquially as, and in the zoning ordinance as, bed and breakfast, but that's kind of adapted over time. Online platforms such as Airbnb, HomeAway, VRBO, and over 100 other online platforms have entered the market. And as they do enter the market, we have to ask ourselves how we may react to the challenges they present. Here's a map that one of our staff members created back in July of 2019 of all these specifically Airbnb rental locations in Bowling Green, Warren County. And what you'll notice at first looking at it is that it is a little bit centric to the center of Bowling Green, but it's also pretty well spread out throughout the county as well. That's something that's important to keep in mind as they grow not only exponentially in number, but exponentially in location diversity as well. There are many benefits to STRs, and they're important to talk about. They're economic contributors to the tourism industry. They provide valuable hotel overflow during large events and busy weekends. They provide authentic travel, as some like to travel to live like a local for a weekend. And they provide valuable home reinvestment opportunities and homeowners with the opportunity to use surplus funds to reinvest in their home. But there's some negative externalities that come on the back of it as well. Affordable housing is an issue in some places as investors are buying up the affordable housing stock, turning them into short-term rentals in some areas. Loss of character, as some homeowners are neighbors to empty homes. Quality of life, as trash, noise, and parking is an issue in some areas. Safety, as some rentals have undercut health and building codes. And a threat to the hotel industry, as places have undercut those codes and undercut the commercial zonings that hotels are restricted to also undercut them on price. With that, we'll be implementing some changes. There will be tax and fee auto collection, something the city is already doing with Airbnb and the county is starting to do as well. Listing requirements will change. The implication that if you are advertising, you are intending to rent and will be treated as such. There will be a new licensing process that will begin through our office and brochures that we'll be sending out to people who are already currently renting or soon intending to rent to get in compliance. With that comes some proposed guideline changes. We'll be restricting permitted use to commercial zones, restricting conditional use to multifamily zones and certain single-family zones, and outlawing use in other certain single-family zones. And the distinction there is that we'll be outlawing use in the RS districts, your RS 1A, B, C, and D. All the other single-family zones will be conditional use. And it's important to note here the difference between bed and breakfast and short-term rentals. Nothing is changing with bed and breakfast. That portion of the text will still be in the zoning ordinance. We're only adding a separate section for STR designation, so that way people have options depending on what they want to do with their property. We'll be streamlining the licensing process, and there will be other smaller miscellaneous items that you can read in the zoning ordinance text changes. Here's a map of Bowling Green, Warren County, and what those implemented changes will look like. The yellow will require a conditional use permit. The orange will require a PUD amendment. The green is permitted by right. But the important thing to take away here is that the only areas that are completely restricted from any bed and breakfast or short-term rental are the gray areas. And if you'll notice, those are rivers and industrial areas. And here's that same map zoomed in on the majority of the properties located in the city. And there you have it. Over the next few months, many of you operating or intending to operate a short-term rental will receive a brochure that looks kind of like this, and it will guide you on the right first steps to take. For a copy of this brochure or any other questions or comments regarding short-term rentals, please call us at 270-842-1953 or visit warrenpc.org. Everyone stay safe and healthy, and thanks for watching.
Thank you, Zach. Now you're going to hear from Rachel about the proposed changes to the sign ordinance.
Welcome, and thank you for your interest in the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance. I'm Rachel Hurt, and I'm a planner on staff at the Planning Commission. Today, I'll be walking you through the proposed changes to the zoning ordinance that relate specifically to signage in our community. So why do we need to change the ordinance? We've been working under the same standards for years, and they seem just fine, right? Well, they were until 2015. In 2015, the United States Supreme Court ruled in the case of Reed versus the Town of Gilbert regarding temporary sign regulations and clarified when municipalities may impose content-based restrictions on signage. Essentially, the Supreme Court ruled that we cannot impose different restrictions relating to height, square footage, location, and display time for temporary signs. Sign restrictions must be content neutral. Basically, if you have to read the sign to determine which standard applies, your ordinance is flawed. Our current ordinance defines different categories of temporary signs and includes different standards for personal expression signs, campaign signs, real estate signs, and construction signs. The current standards are outlined on this slide. So in order to adhere to the ruling in Reed versus Gilbert, we have been tasked with reviewing our current standards and making changes to adhere to the Supreme Court's decision. This is the main purpose of the proposed amendment to the sign section of the zoning ordinance, to adhere to the decision in Reed v. Gilbert. Another goal of the proposed amendment is to clean up clutter in the rights-of-ways in our community. There are also proposed changes relating to entrance signs, permitting requirements, roof signs, billboards, shared signage options, and signage in the urban growth overlay districts. Staff is hopeful that the proposed changes will be simple, clear and concise, easy to administer, and easy to enforce. That being said, let's jump into the proposed changes. First, I would like to go over the proposed changes relating to temporary signs in greater detail. Signs will no longer be permitted in the right-of-way, except government-placed signs. Permitted signs in the right-of-way include signs installed by the Bowling Green Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, WKU, and the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, or also through written agreement with a governmental entity. This provision also includes signs for the purpose of community wayfinding, beautification, welcoming visitors, and other public purposes. Any other signs located in the right-of-way will be removed and destroyed. Off-premise signs and messages are currently prohibited and will continue to be prohibited for temporary signage. The proposed changes incorporate different requirements for residential and non-residential properties, including square footage based on property size. All properties would be permitted to have 2 temporary signs with unique messages. No duplicate messages will be permitted. Corner lots are allowed to have 2 temporary signs per frontage. Real estate signs will be permitted only on the property that is listed for sale or for lease. Temporary signs are not allowed on utility poles, street lights, or on public property. Temporary signs must be non-illuminated. If attached to the facade or window of a building, signage will be treated as wall signage and not classified as a temporary sign. Along with changes relating to temporary signs, the proposed amendment also incorporates changes for entrance signs, roof signs, light pole banners, shared signage, digital billboards, and signage in the urban growth overlay districts. The proposed changes incorporate flexibility in the design of entrance signs for subdivisions. Additional changes for entrance signs include an increase in the permitted height to 7 feet and a reduction in permitted sign face area to 32 square feet. Currently, roof signs are prohibited. The proposed changes will allow roof signs as long as the top of the sign face is located below the highest point of the tallest roof line of the building to which the sign is attached. Light pole banners are also currently prohibited, but are present on many properties within our community. The proposed changes define and allow these types of banners, but with certain restrictions regarding permitted zones, square footage, and quantity. The proposed changes also incorporate a new type of signage, shared signage. In lieu of one freestanding sign per tract of land, property owners may elect to share one freestanding sign for multiple parcels in conjunction with a principal use or uses operated on such parcels within the same boundary of the participating tracts. This type of signage may be useful for businesses wanting to have visibility along a main roadway, but that may not necessarily have frontage on that roadway. Digital billboards are currently prohibited. The proposed changes would allow digital billboards, but these billboards would also be subject to the regulations for protected areas for outdoor advertising, which are administered by the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. The proposed changes, coupled with the existing zoning ordinance requirements for spacing and the additional state and federal regulations, will limit the number of digital billboards that can exist within our community. There are a few changes also proposed relating to signage in the urban growth overlay districts. Wall signage in the Lovers Lane Overlay District is currently limited to the facade that faces the roadway which the building is located. The proposed changes allow flexibility for wall signage to be placed on the facade containing the primary public entrance, regardless of the location of the road. Finally, the changes incorporate a prohibition of LED signs in the Lovers Lane Overlay District. This change was incorporated at the request of the Urban Growth Overlay Design Review Board. Article 7 of the zoning ordinance outlines enforcement provisions for the zoning ordinance. Proposed changes to this section of the ordinance include a clarification that fines for sign violations may be assessed per sign. Proposed changes also grant authority to staff of the Bowling Green Public Works Department, the Warren County Public Works Department, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and Operation Pride to enforce the provisions of the ordinance relating to temporary signs located in the public right-of-way, including the removal and disposal of such signage. Article 8 of the zoning ordinance includes definitions for several key terms found throughout other sections of the ordinance. The proposed changes include clarification for the definitions of a few terms, including sign, motor vehicle control sign, and structure. New definitions for several terms were also added, including government sign, inflatable sign, integral sign, sidewalk sign, and snipe sign. Definitions for other terms were amended, including the definitions for on-premise sign, portable sign, roof sign, temporary sign, and wall or building sign. I think that should cover it for our proposed changes to the zoning ordinance relating to signage. The draft changes I have reviewed today may be assessed on our website, www.warrenpc.org. If you have any questions or comments regarding these amendments, please do not hesitate to contact me through email at rachel.hurt@bgky.org or by phone at 270-842-1953. Thank you for joining me and for your interest in the upcoming changes to the zoning ordinance.
Thank you, Rachel. As a reminder, temporary sign regulations are currently suspended during the pandemic emergency. Should the state of emergency still be in effect when these changes to the temporary sign regulations are adopted, then the changes would either just not apply or not be enforced until the regulations are back in place after the emergency order is lifted. Now I will talk about some other proposed changes to the zoning ordinance besides just short-term rentals or sign changes. So we've added some specific protection language for cemeteries that developers will have to consult a cemetery board prior to developing property or going to the Planning Commission to get approval. We've cleaned up some mismatched language between residential zones for accessory structures and twin homes. We've reduced minimum lot sizes in RM2 from 11,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. And then we've added flexibility for outdoor storage areas in commercial and industrial zones. We've added group living as a conditional use in the agricultural zone. We've clarified requirements and added flexibility for the keeping of animals in residential zones. We added flexibility in the home office category to allow limited merchandise storage for up to 200 square feet. Currently, there are no regulations for storage, but this will allow people who sell on Etsy or have Mary Kay, Avon, those types of businesses to allow limited product storage in their homes. We added flexibility for screening requirements for self-storage when located adjacent to property zoned in industrial. And then most of the other changes are housekeeping only changes, just some cleanups and clarification of other parts of the ordinance. This concludes our summary of the proposed changes. Here is how you can participate by providing your comments for the proposed changes. First, you can just simply call us at 270-842-1953 and ask for Rachel, Zach, or myself. Or you may use the Contact Us form here. Just give us your name and either your email or phone number and just select Zoning and Comprehensive Plan with your specific question. Or you may just go to the About section of our website, scroll to the bottom, and select the staff member's name, and that should bring up an email to email us your questions. We will conduct a Zoom virtual public hearing forum on Monday, June 15th at 5 p.m. It will be using Zoom. This will be an opportunity for you to go just rehear the summary of the changes and ask any questions. Then we will have a formal public hearing tentatively at the July 16th Planning Commission meeting. This is the meeting where the Planning Commission will make their motion in the form of a recommendation to the legislative bodies. This would be an opportunity to make comments on the record, which will be forwarded to the legislative bodies when they consider adoption of the changes. Ideally, this will be face-to-face meetings by this time, but if not, we will continue to use Zoom for meeting participation. Adoption by the local government bodies is expected in the late summer to fall timeframe. Thank you for watching, and we will continue to seek new ways to inform and engage the public when changes are proposed. As always, please do not hesitate to contact us with any questions you may have.